Pretty much anything and everything you need to run a Disney World-esque kind of organization and company. I'm going to turn it over to these guys real quick. I will be facilitating today, so most things will be directed towards me. If you have questions, I'll answer what I can, and what I feel like they may be able to answer better, we'll redirect to them as well. Now we have Mr.
So my name is Lee Liston. I'm the Director of Community Outreach over at Evermore. I'm also a full-time actor, so I play a character named Suds McBride who runs the bar over there. It's a lot of fun. It's an amazing experience, and it's what I do.
I'm Tyrell Clement. I'm Director of Gamification, or one of them. I deal mainly with ciphers and puzzles that we have in the park. I'm also one of the full-time actors. I play Cephas the Executioner and Zodi the Mystic.
And I'm Mallory deForest. I'm one of the directors of Story, so I help with the writing, and we work together writing quests and stuff like that. And then I also act in Park. I play the historian because I talk way too much and know all that's in the story. And I play a witch who doesn't have to talk as much, which is very exciting.
Are they able to hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know how formal we want to be. I mean, are we looking for a discussion here, or are you guys looking more for a lecture? Because I can give you both. I've taught in both everything from secondary education to a college level, so you guys let me know kind of what would be, you think, most effective for us being here today.
If you want to do discussion, we can start there.
Yeah, I love that, because then we can go ahead and just kind of hit very key specific things.
Do you want to explain what Evermore is and
We
how
can
it
try.
shows and all that? Yeah.
So for those who in here is familiar with Evermore?
Oh, okay.
Wow, that's shocking. So awesome, we got some in there. All right, excellent guys. So Evermore Park, and the best way we've kind of tried to describe it, and it's kind of a choose-your-own-adventure experience in an interactive theatrical theme park that spans roughly about 17 acres. You can go in and be a wallflower and just enjoy the sights and not have to worry about it socially interacting, but it does give a safe social place for even people who are kind of trying to build up that courage and the strength to interact with people, and they're allowed to interact with fantasy characters. So it makes it a little easier when you're talking to an elf rather than, even just some person at a grocery store. And we have an entire series of quests from so many different levels, from just very national treasure kind of stuff, so you find little clues in our architecture and setting throughout the park, all the way to intense chain quests where you join a guild and you're trying to help support your guild and raise gold or fight against the darkness and other aspects of whatever the conflict is for that season as it comes in. It's like a live action Skyrim, live action World of Warcraft in a sense, but not as formulaic. So if you were to come, an example would be a wife wants her husband to come home, and she knows that he's at the tavern. And so a world walker comes up, as what we call our guest. A world walker comes up and says, oh, help me, I just want my husband to come home. He's been at the tavern all night. I'm worried about him. So you show up to the tavern, you find the husband, and the husband's like, I can't go home. I lost my wedding ring, and then it can spawn off to even more. And at any point in time, you can choose to not finish the quest. We have hundreds of side quests. We have main storyline quests. We have, it's insane. And like anything else you guys want to add in on top of our wardrobe, our special effects is all film, like LA film level as well. So
we have artifacts from actual England there. It's part of the building and all.
Very
that
historical,
well, so,
yeah. A lot of historical.
There's some
pieces
educational stuff. We have a bird show with actual, birds and reptiles and some live animals, and there's all aspects of that too.
Yeah, we're meshing a lot of different mediums into one area. You can do action throwing, archery as well, and all of that's for the price of one of these haunts in kind of a local area. You pay about $30 to stand in line for an hour and get about a 10-minute experience. You may have to stand in our line for an hour, but you can get a 5 to 6 hour experience for the whole entire evening.
I believe he.
Yes.
So,
I seem to remember like a reality show, like a reality show that happened a little while ago that was
I know
on
what
the
you're talking
same
about.
line. And I was wondering if it was, because they had kind of this, a theme kind of like this. And they had, do you remember the name of it?
Quest.
The Quest, yeah, that's
The Quest,
exactly what it was,
Is
yeah.
that connected with your?
No.
So it's completely different, because it seems very
There's
similar.
definitely similarities there.
Yeah.
That was definitely a lot more controlled, whereas we have to create an environment that makes the guest feel like they're the ones in control, which is
Right.
very hard to do for thousands of people every night.
Right.
And we have a living story, so you come in Monday night, the events of what people make happen on Monday night affects every night after, and the story changes. So you never get the same experience ever again. There may be some things a little similar, but like recently we've had 2 character deaths in the park. We have kind of a Jack the Ripper story that's going on for our Halloween season. And there was an engagement party where the groom-to-be was poisoned at the end of it, so we created a nice little murder mystery that's come out of this. We have a newspaper called Evermore Gazette that then also showcases a lot. So while you're waiting to go in, we're already immersing you into the story. So you immediately know, oh, there's these problems in town, people are looking for help and work in these particular areas, and also try our new food that we have at concessions.
Do you have a lot of repeat customers that come
Yes.
back like day after day because they want to continue?
Yes, which we're grateful because our ticket prices aren't, cheap, yeah. I mean, they're very reasonable for what you get out of actually I think they're more than reasonable. Our food also is not theme park prices, it's barely even movie theater prices. So, which is very unique in this type of environment. We want people to enjoy the experience, and we don't want you to keep paying money to get a better experience. Like Disney and a lot of these companies are doing now, they monetize everything. So you can get the Star Wars experience, but only if you have another $2,000 to get the full experience. And we're absolutely trying to be as much as we can against that.
Cool.
Yes.
I want to know from like the genesis of this idea in terms of what has changed. Like what have you, as you went to implement, like and what's the driving forces? Is it the market? Is it your stakeholders? Like what's driving?
All of those in a lot of ways. So ultimately, our motto, especially for the past year, where we've been in our alpha phase, is what we've called it. So we definitely went more like a game development company in that aspect. Fell faster is kind of what we try to do. We have our investors are happy as long as they're making money. So usually there's not too much on the creative end that they kind of demand of us. Our owner and founder definitely is able to weave his vision because it's all birthed from him. And this was like a childhood kind of dream of his. And then when he kind of got struck by luck with a software company, he then took the profits of that software company and just said, I'm going to try and make this dream happen. And the hardest thing right now is just trying to get people who haven't been to understand what effect the park is having on our community, the people around us. It's really, really great stuff that's happening.
So when we first opened our Halloween season last year, which was the first season that had the public open, the park wasn't fully, we're still under construction.
Yeah.
We're going to constantly improve the space. But we had almost more of a show, much more of a linear progression planned out, and that's actually what we rehearsed for. And then there wasn't enough of the park finished to do that. So that's when it sort of became more of the open world concept.
Sandbox. Yeah.
Sandbox. So it was like, okay, well, we've developed backstories with all our actors. They've worked really hard on that part. We've written a couple of interesting quests that make you bounce all over the park, so you're seeing what we have done, and we can kind of tailor that by you get sent to this specific character in this specific location, so that to make sure that they've seen all the parts.
And that was all trial by fire.
Yes.
Because we originally, it was just everything was going to be on rails, is
Yeah.
what we call it. So you just go point A, point B, point C, point D, grab some food, take your family home. So
Yeah.
it'd be just kind of like going to a haunt.
Right.
And we, even in rehearsal, we were like,
Yeah, it
this
didn't
is not
feel
gonna
right,
work,
and-
yeah,
and it,
they
you
need
know,
something more,
Well,
'cause
and
why?
we cast really talented people who, so even in rehearsals, when we were being, some of us were pretending to be the World Walkers, you'd spend too much time talking to one character because they had this really cool story they had written. And then we're like, okay, the pulsing, the getting people through is not really gonna work. So then we opened with the open world concept. Well, about halfway through, we got a little bit more of the part done. We're like, well, let's try the show, like a little bit of the show, like not fully show, but
Yeah.
let's try cordoning it off and making people walk through it. Literally, they tore down hay bales.
Yeah.
Our patrons were like, you've already given us the sandbox, let's go back to what
Yeah, after that, there's no way we could go back to Rails.
Yeah, no,
We've
no.
tried, because the owner definitely wants that to be part of the experience.
Right.
And we want to give you like, 10, 15 different experiences just from our main places, and then you get an individual experience with every single actor that you interact
Yeah.
with.
I mean, that's part of it too, is that again, right now, especially with the sandbox, there is a certain amount of onus on the patron to make sure that they're talking to people, making sure that they are the ones kind of openly interacting. I mean, our actors do a great job, and our
Pulling
ops and
in,
stuff
yeah.
pulling in, but unless you're having a good conversation, it is tricky. And so that's putting some stuff on rails is important, because we will have the ones who want to just stand back and watch. So it's trying to cater to a much broader audience than the ones who are socially excited to talk.
In those kinds of events, I'm very much like an introvert, and so I'd rather be a fly on the wall at places like Disney World and Universal Studios. And so for me, absolutely in the park, I would bring like at least one or two people who love to kind of socialize and let them do all the talking while I watch the characters. And some of our patrons do this because we tell story not just through what we're saying, it's also through the body and our actions as well. And so when you're trying to find out whether or not I'm where I was on Monday night when so-and-so passed out or something, we kind of play off a little bit of the suspicion of it too.
Do patrons come in character themselves? Do they dress up? And for
That's the point.
patrons who don't,
It's great if they do, because it's just so much more fun.
but there
yeah.
might be a lot of potential customers who might feel uncomfortable dressing up the first
Yep.
time.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
So if they come not dressed in character, do you have stuff that they can put on there? I mean, I'm just
Not
trying
yet.
to understand.
So the idea is like kind of, there's some kind of concepts of that where you could like maybe pay a VIP $90 pass or something, and we like dress you in our costumes and stuff. Those are things definitely we have in theory to kind of try at a later point when we get the company to a level that then we can start really catering to our guests. Because what we really want is if you want to be like royalty for the night, we'll bring you in and we'll treat you like royalty. Because we do that right now, but we do it only for like our mascot miracles and charity kind of events where we bring in these kids who are terminal, and we make them royalty and give them red carpet, carriage, the full thing, personal interactions. Last night, Monday night, we had just an amazing, we call their angels through Mascot Miracles. And so we had just a beautiful experience. Had a little tea party, and she got to send out invitations to the goblins or to whoever she met in park to come and have tea with her in a little private area while the droids were serenading. It was it's good stuff for the soul, good stuff for the heart. Yes.
So why Pleasant Grove? Like, why Pleasant Grove, Utah? Did you explore other areas, and what's the?
They were the ones who agreed ultimately to allow us to do something like that. Yeah, so the city, the owner lives in the area, and he had been doing a backyard Halloween for a couple of years, kind of building up to it. And it got to a point where the city had to get involved to help with the traffic, because there's like 3,000 to 5,000, I think it may have been more, I think it was like 13,000 one year going through his backyard. And then he and his wife at one point said, we should figure out a way to do this like not at our house, and maybe turn it into a business. And then Evermore, the birth of Evermore, and that level of development, the idea he's had ever since he was a kid, but it's having the money to drop into something like this and hope, hope that it can be a success. That's where we're kind of at this point. We're starting to get a nice kind of turnout. Our advertising wasn't the best, for our past year, and it's kind of getting better for this year. And again, trying to sell something like this is really hard when you cram all that onto a billboard. People don't. So we're trying very simple tactics this season, where it's just Halloween, Evermore, that's it. Like hopefully that'll get it. It's a park. Go to our website. Yeah. Yes.
Who are your current customers and who are the customers that you hope to target, and how do you do that on social media currently?
So we basically have been really developing our social media. For a start-up company like this, we're masters of many hats. And so far, that's been kind of our process until we're able to get the right people in the right places. That'll be moving forward. We have a social media manager who'll be focusing on specific targeted audiences. The easy audience, of course, is the cosplay kind of geeky nerd culture, which most of us are absolutely a part of. And so it's very easy. That's why we even were drawn into it. And getting those guests has been great. Holding those guests is what is difficult, because they want a deeper, richer story than, someone who's just like, normally I go to a baseball game, and so trying to convince those people that it's a fun experience. Families, absolutely. We have even our Monday nights or our family nights, and we're trying to create better ways to make it affordable for especially larger families. And so those are all things that we're kind of going into development now. And the hardcore kind of fan is not so hard to get. We definitely need to do better things for them, like give them multi-passes and subscriptions or season passes. And that's all coming too. There's just other technical aspects. We always run into a hiccup, so the idea, we're like, yeah, that'd be great. But the actually like bringing it forth is not as easy, especially right now, because our point of sales is just, we chose the wrong software and the wrong system to do that. And so now we're quickly trying to update our network, change the entire thing while we're still in the middle of a season, which is insane. On top of everything else that's going on. We like, overall, to just be open for anyone. Like, we'd love it be almost like a Disney in a sense. We're building an IP, and that's the most important thing right now, is people want recognizable things. Disney is able to just set up a princess park with no interaction whatsoever, but we love it because we see all of our favorite Disney characters on walls or built into the set. We don't have the luxury of that. The closest thing we have is our burrows, which looks like Hobbiton. And so it's got the circle doors, and it's under a hill and everything like that. And so people can kind of like, ooh, it's Lord of the Rings. But then we have like singing dwarves inside there, so there's no hobbits. Although we have Weta. Weta has come out multiple times and spent time with us in the workshop, which has been just a huge honor to even work with the people who made Lord of the Rings a possibility.
I think it's really funny, if that's okay. I wonder if it's the elephant in the room or the dwarf in the room or whatever it is. But we have these dwarves, right? We have these two dwarves, Lonnie and Turno. And the funny part is I play Suds McBride, and I don't play a dwarf. And so you have these two dwarf characters that are tall.
Yeah, they're like 6 foot dwarves.
So it throws people off. They're like, oh, go talk to the dwarves in the burrows. And they're like, wait, you're not a dwarf? I'm like, no, they are. And they're like, no, I'm a dwarf with giantism, and you're just a dwarf. I'm like, oh, and so it's really, really fun because I've got to play this character that you would think in this fantasy theme park, of all things, is a caricature, but he's the one guy that isn't a caricature, that isn't in prosthetics, that isn't in this thing. I'm not Willow, just kidding, but any of these things, and that's kind of been the phenomenal thing, is because we have an original thing, we can constantly break typecast, because we can bring anything that's real.
Which is what we push.
Right.
We really push it. We're pushing the medium like crazy.
Yeah, and so it's a phenomenal experience when you come, that you're interacting and that you feel approachable and you feel important. That when you come, it's not the characters that are important, it's you that's important.
You're the heroes, you're the champions, you're the one who's going to make change, you're the one that's going to save our town.
And if I can, one of the craziest experiences, I remember when we were first opening Lore last year, and it was all new, it's all development, and there's a lot of pressure on you, because you're like, if I don't have a deep story, they don't care about you, you don't care. But you know, and you're a tavern owner, and that's almost like a throwaway character in a lot of ways. And I was even told that essentially like this was a throwaway character, but we developed this thing in the story. So this World Walker character came in, and she was talking to me like as Suds, and she got to this point, she's like, "You're not very interesting," and I was like, okay.
They can be
You know,
pretty harsh.
they're intense. They're not afraid. It's like those Facebook comments that are mean,
We get that.
but they're saying it to your face.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, we're not afraid to say it. And I was like, okay, well that kind of hurt, but all right. And so as we were chatting though, she goes, "Do you fancy anyone in the town?" And I was like, well, I don't know. They're like, well, there's this lady named Clara Nettleton that lives by the mill. She's kind of cute. And like, ooh, tell us more. And I was like, well, can you maybe like go tell her hello and like from Suds and tell me what she says? And they're like, okay. And they like ran off, and it became this huge like back and forth
Romance quest.
like this huge romance thing that developed.
Only in Evermore.
and it developed this whole thing. But the point of me telling that story is not to tell like, let me tell you the story of my character. But like, that's not the point. The point of telling you this is you guys influence so much when you come to the park. That has birthed all these quests, all these stories, all these adventures. And any one of these guys down the line, and Bobby, anybody that talks about their characters, you guys have influenced that we have implemented the story. So please understand that you're so important when you come to the park, and you're not just someone who's going down the line experiencing this linear thing. You are coming to be a part of the magic. So yeah.
And writing that is a nightmare. It really is. It's crazy because yes.
So to kind of build off your Disney analogy, it sounds like, because when you go to Disneyland, you know, you're going, in addition to the attractions and stuff, the characters there, you're going to see Mickey Mouse and Cinderella and Snow White and Goofy and things like that. But it sounds like in your park, the customers are Mickey Mouse and Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty.
In a lot of ways, yeah. And it's kind of crazy because when you do that, right? So Disney's formula is like it's very restricted because of their IP. So Cinderella can only say so many Cinderella things. Cinderella can't go off of script, where we have to design our scripts to where what you say to us can be a possibility at any moment. And so we have a philosophy amongst our acting troupe that's called Yes In, which many of you may be familiar with, and trying to implement that across roughly 60 characters, even sometimes more than that, and 1,000+ guests. Every night becomes a logistical nightmare, especially in the sense of quest. But we're getting it. I think we're really. It takes a force of us to write for it every day, but already this season, especially the past couple of weeks, there's been huge leaps in making that a lot more efficient and effective. And so we do get a little more freedom, which is nice.
We have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Oh shoot, hold on. There's a very extensive conversation happening in here. People are raving about Evermore, and I think there was even a comment in here at one point about how I'd rather go to Evermore again than Lagoon. So you're doing something right.
Come for us.
Hold on. I seem to scroll up.
And I'm actually going to Frightmares on Sunday, so I still like Lagoon as well.
All right, I'm going to try to
It's
read
different than
this.
what we offer.
Yeah.
They have rides. Our actors are our rides. Our quests are our rides. Story is our ride.
Okay, so the question in the chat, what is required before someone can play a character? What scripts, practice, tools do they need effectively to do that?
For our actors, is that just to specify, because...
Yeah, so for the actors, yes.
A lot. Some of it's trade secret stuff, but overall, it's very intense, the process. Auditioning is unlike any auditioning that actors ever have to do. So we basically start immersing you and seeing how well you can handle the pressure of having 40 people all trying to talk to you at the same time. And while you're trying to push a story agenda as well. One of the most difficult things that over the year, what we've experienced is you're in authentic dialect or accent for last year it was like 9 hours a day and 6 days a week, which was brutal. You're so intensely in that dialect, and you have to have it so perfected because when you're playing a French character and you're speaking to someone who comes into the park that is also French, I hope you speak French. And I had to like brush up a lot on my French, especially since I'm Cajun French, so not Parisian French. So that was stuff like that. And then also our poor actors are talking and thinking and dreaming in their accent and dialect as well, which is crazy. Physicality, we put them through the ringers as well. And it's just a lot, lots of intensive. Our first season, what did we do, 7 weeks? 7 weeks of rehearsal. We had that luxury because it was our first season. Now we get maybe 3 to 5 days of rehearsal of a couple of hours, but we refined the technique to a level, and you're also looking for a certain level of professionalism from people who are acting. That this is not film, this is not theater. Nothing prepares you for what it's a hybrid of it, but still nothing prepares you for actually working as a performer in the park.
So
If you're on
follow-up
stage
question.
or in front of the screen and stuff, you don't get people who come up and park in front of you for like 3 hours and be like, all right, so as a kid, what was your favorite toy? And you're like, oh, I never thought about that.
The background, the background building of it, we definitely empower the actor to work with us as the writers to really flesh out. I mean, you have to create a life because they will ask you who your first grade girlfriend was. They will ask you where, what district you live in the particular town. So I got hit with playing a Belgium character and someone asked where I lived and I was like, and I was like, Lachlan, I lived there, and they're like, oh, that district, and I was like, yeah, it's a little more French than it is Dutch, and then, so it's just like quickly trying to come up with something, and then what you do, you have to report it, so that way it becomes canon into the story.
My historian is from Norway originally, and so yes, I've had people who serve their missions in Norway, and they went to talk to me about Norway. I've never been to Norway in my life, and so yeah, I'm outside of Kristiansand, and then it's a question of, so we're in the 1800s roughly. Is Kristiansand existing back then?
Yeah.
Do I give the answers of Norway now, or do I give the answers of Norway back in the historical times? How much leeway can I get out of that? It's
and the difficulty too is it is like roughly the 1880s based off of our fashion, and you can tell because it's women's fashion that ultimately dictates what time period we're in, and our costumers has specifically picked the 1880s. So speaking English in the 1880s, and the terminology we use is not even what is used in England today. The language has evolved. And so we have to really think of our history on top of the linguistics of it as it's insane. But at least we're a company of nerds, so we got it.
So there was a follow-up question in the chat to that. Well, there are lots of questions in the chat, but this one is directly related. How do you manage burnout from the actors? It seems like it would be fairly demanding.
It is very demanding, and yes, at the end of the night, it's crazy because at the end of the night we are like
so energetic.
A lot of people are fed, so then the story keeps kind of going. We have a wrap up with all of us, and then a lot of times we'll go to a undisclosed location to have food together, and then kind of share everything. And it's really, we have to have that being part of the process because it's so much information to absorb, and we just don't have the luxury of like having exit interviews every single night. And so we kind of do like, what are the main things that stood out for us in the evening?
So yeah, we do get a certain amount of burnout. Is that we get a lot of people getting sick towards the end of every season. But the actual being in park, yes, there's exhausting and you're mentally on all the time. But the World Walkers do also feed you a lot,
Which helps.
Which helps a lot. And again, we've weeded out the very first season. We had a mix of actors who were ready for Evermore and some who weren't, and they've just not returned.
It was almost split.
Yeah, and so we've gotten to the point of everyone who's there is again, if they weren't working for Evermore, they would be a member of some of our Uber fan groups. And so they love speculating just as much as the patrons do, and they constantly are sending in emails of what they want to do next with their character. So there's a feeding of just getting to be in the creative process. Luckily, right now, we're only open a couple days a week, so there is a certain amount of you can go, but they hate
But
going back to their
And it's
real
ramping.
lives.
Yeah, actually, because most of our people have to have day jobs until the park is really fully functioning. We're slowly building to it, and so it'd be really nice when this is just our full-time job for our entire company and our cast included, because then we can really push the medium. Right now, it's a lot of us volunteering and donating hours because we just love this and we want this to be a success. It's unlike something that's ever happened before. I think the Playhouse Theater in New York kind of did this during the Depression, where a lot of actors were able to get together in one place, all these creatives, and they were all starving artists, but they had one central location, and then they wanted to share all of their ideas and experiences to push the medium into the next 2-3 decades. That's still carrying on to today.
And for quest-wise and story-wise, we do a certain amount of, so we have a group of, so say hunters, for example, is one of our guilds. We have 3 hunters in park. Now, each of them has their own personality and their own character, but like quest-wise or story-wise, any one of them can fill that role. So if an actor does get tired or sick, they can request a night off, and their character just not in park that night. But their fellow actors can help. And we're a big family at this point. All characters know each other, so there's a lot of like, if someone's not here and you have a specific question for them, if you're not going to come back for a little while, someone can probably answer the question for you too.
Yeah, an example is the other night we launched a question to park, and then we realized that we didn't have our troll sisters to play a key part in it. So we're 5-10 minutes away from opening the doors, and we had to quickly like find the right character to shift the entire story to that particular character.
Thanks, good. So I'm curious to talk about how you have, elves and dwarfs and goblins, but you're also mentioning that Norway and France. So I guess I assumed, I've never been there, but I assumed from kind of the beginning that it was taking place kind of like in a non-real world, like Middle Earth, but in a fictional place.
That
But it
might,
sounds
once
like
we
it's-
get out of beta, we may do something like that, but right now what we established, we're just trying to stick to, but I'm sorry, I didn't.
So is it like an alternate history where there is a Belgium and France, but there's also goblins and dwarves and elves? And...
So the amazing thing about Evermore is that it is the site of portals, so gateways to other worlds open there. So we're in an ordinary Victorian town where this is literally the spiel I give all the time in park, which is why
And without
I
like
understand.
spoiling, because a lot of this is you're learning how the town functions too. And so there's layers, it's, you just keep peeling away. She was talking about how, it's the hunters. At first you see them, they're like, these leather-bound kind of ruffian types. And then you find out they're the hunters. But then when you get closer to them, you start to find out that they actually call themselves the Blackhearts. And then you find out that they're a history that goes all the way back to the time of the Dark Ages of how, it gets
Depends on how
how deep you want to go, and we've got it.
Yeah.
So,
The mechanics is we have, again, these things called portals that open up just to this town of Evermore, and then, so we have a world called Mythos, that's where most of your typical Lord of the Rings stuff comes from. So fairies, goblins, ogres, elves. We've got our haunted one, which is called Lore, and the only thing right now that's really come out of that is this disease that infects the town and then we have this Christmas one that's Auroran, that's very more Viking-esque, more
Dickensian.
And stuff like that.
And we have the world that you come from,
Right,
which
the
is
Worldwalker portal.
the Worldwalker portal
It's
is
a time portal rather than a
a time, but it also, because we have people who come through, right? They're in full garb, they're satyrs or whatever they've gotten. They brought their whole D&D party to come and interact, and they know what world they come from, right? And so they have their whole story when they come in to interact with us, and then we just cater to it. Like, what world are you from? Interesting. And then we start asking them, like, tell us about your world, because we only know of these other worlds.
I sat with a gentleman in Aurora for the full 6 hours that we were there. He just sat next to me, and anytime anyone would come up to talk to me, he would stop talking. But anytime we had a moment of lull, and he told me his entire backstory of his character. And he was one of our Uber fans, so he had actually twisted it so that it connected to our world.
Oh yeah, a lot of them are doing that now.
He was talking about, he wanted to know what I knew about Lore, this portal with this disease, because it had visited his world and decimated it, and he wanted to compare notes.
Which is great, because they took our story
Yeah.
and then they ran with it to create their own story, and then they brought it back to us, and then we were like, all right, let's bring aspects of their stuff in. Like, everyone has a creative part just by being a guest in our park, which is crazy on our end for allowing that.
One of the things I want to interject too is one of the things I want to interject is we've been talking a lot about D&D and Dungeons and Dragons, and which our park accommodates in so many levels. But when I started coming into this park, I didn't come into this park because I've actually never played Dungeons and Dragons. I've never been in that kind of fantasy
We're
era.
gonna fix that though.
Yeah, we can definitely fix it. But one of the things that kind of like also like on the other side is it's just really about the interaction and about the acting that you get to play this deep character. So like I think the other gift too, like it's not just this, that Evermore isn't just D&D, or it's not just this, it's not just this. It's open to all, it's of people to come in and interact, and there really is something. You don't have to be like, oh, if I don't play D&D, can I go to the park? Or if I don't dress up, can I go to the park? You can go, as a person and as a world walker, I went with my girlfriend, and we went, and on a night off, I went into the park and got to walk around the park. And given like I've never done this and never did, and I was kind of nervous. I was like, I do this every night, but I'm really nervous to like walk up and interact with these characters that I see all the time. And you go in and you're just so immersed. And I was meeting all these amazing people and seeing all these amazing performances driven too. So just know that it's open to whatever level you want to play at.
Well, and to kind of trail off from kind of what you're saying is, like, we have live shows that are happening just like theater. We have an acting troupe that performs shows that it stands in for, if you're watching a TV show, at the beginning of the show it says previously on, that's what we use our acting troupe. So right when you come in, you're getting caught up on all the story that kind of have. Now it's their interpretation and it's a parody of it. So they kind of make a joke out of it, and then you interact with the actual people involved in the story in the park, and that changes the narrative tremendously because they kind of joke about people dying and things like that in their acts, kind of mockingly in a sense. But then when you meet the person who's been affected by that in real life, our actors play the trauma of it, and so it definitely starts to play with your perspective in a lot of ways, which again we really love giving you those kinds of levels.
This question is kind of along the lines of what you're talking about. So can you explain kind of if someone's just going to the park, what they can expect or how they can expect to be drawn in by the actors? So for example, I've been to the haunted houses and you got the scary guy and he kind of scares you and then you go to one.
Push.
And I've been
We call
to
it push and pull,
Disneyland
yeah.
and Goofy will kind of wave at you and just let you go by. So how is that different, and how do the actors interact differently with someone who may come in costume or versus someone who may not? So it seems like you've got two camps of patrons, those who are really into it, have been there before, and those who maybe haven't been there before and just come in their t-shirt. What specifically do the actors do to draw people in?
So the writer level is design where that helps us out. So we try to design for first timers. We try to design for people who are more casual. We try to design for the sports fanatic who got dragged along, right? And their daughter or their wife or something may have made them come to something like this. And we definitely had those guys, and they're hard. Those are hard customers to get because they're just like this the whole time. Just like, I don't want to have fun. But then at the end of the night, they're like singing and dancing with fairies, right? And so those are huge wins for us. But I'll turn it more over to the actors because we have a lot of different things in place to be able to do that, depending on, like you said, from someone who's just in a baseball cap who just got brought along to the hardcore. We do make sure to keep, all of our guests are very important to us. Mm-hmm. And so we're not really specifically catering to any one group, but we have to almost schizophrenically adjust to the level of interaction and intensity that they want. And so we have people who are like, they'll sit there and like Sherlock Holmes you the whole time, and then they'll post it online to these large groups where thousands of people then make that canon. And so once it's locked in, we're like, okay, that's the way it is now apparently. And then off to
there's a lot of difference between, with a casual or a first time person who comes in t-shirt and stuff, you do a lot more of the talking as the actor. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more about, okay, you see them, and a lot of times they're walking around, you can tell them also because they just do a lot of,
they're like this in their
or
map.
Their map or whatever.
Yeah.
They have a look about them, and so you are like, hello, how can I help you today? Like, who's talked to you, who have you get a little bit of, you have a couple of questions that you ask them. It's like, what level have you already been engaged in? And if you they're like, we have no idea what we're doing. You're like, great, here's my opening spiel. Every single one of us has an opening thing, and everyone is slightly different, but it's like, you can go on quests, so go around asking people how you can help them if you want to do that.
Yep.
If you don't want to do that, and then all of us have a specific person in mind. So I send a lot of people again to the dwarves, because they're really good just show, they sing, and they're really good at including people into the singing and stuff. They sing
It's like going to a
parody versions of pop songs most of the time.
It's like going to see a band like at a local club or something
Right.
like that.
So
You
I
go in
send
there
people
and that's
to
what
them.
their experience is.
If a person seems really interested in more story stuff, I might send them to some of my more of like, and we have sort of tiers of, there's the scholar characters that are a lot more informational based, of which I'm
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
But then with people who come in costume, you ask them questions. It's always, hey, why are you dressed this way? Where do you come from? And that's really, once you get someone talking about,
charm.
once you get them talking, it's really easy to bring them in. It's
Oh,
like
because they love to
really-
talk. They
yeah,
definitely want to tell you
and
about
then
their
you're relating. It's like, okay, well, that's, your cloak is really cool. You're from this world. I've heard of that world. It's very similar to Mythos, where the goblins are. You might want to go meet them.
Yeah.
And all of us are pretty good. We also have a really simple thing of we get people to collect gold, and they're really simple, easy quests. So it's like, and they're always normally one step. It's like, okay, so sometimes as the witch, I say, all right, go find 3 leaves that have fallen on the ground and bring them back to me, and I'll give you a piece of gold. And then when they bring me the leaves, I read them and tell them what the tree is thinking when he lost the leaf.
We create magic out of nothing. Yeah, Lee?
Something also, if
Your mic.
oh, sorry, I keep forgetting that. One thing I would also advise you to do is if I imagine we all have Facebook. If you get on Facebook and just search Evermore, there's like lots of Evermore communities that he had brought up. I would get on those pages, and then you can actually interact on those. You can be like, hey guys, I'm actually a new World Walker. I've never been to Evermore. What do you expect? I'm nervous about this. Because we're talking about, being an actor communicating with a World Walker, but then you can actually get on those community pages as a World Walker perspective and be like, hey, can you help me out? I'm kind of new. How can I do that? And so that way you don't have to get familiar at the park. You can get familiar a little bit before.
And to add to that, because we're not just catering locally, we're absolutely trying to push an international market with this. And so what I saw recently is we have a lot of guests who've come from Maryland, other parts of Canadians, people from England. They can't come every single night to get that living story experience. But boy, do they get it in those fan pages, because and then the fans almost feel responsible for letting them know, like when we had a major character death, which had never happened in parks, so it echoed, kind of almost blew up that part of the internet. So that was really a cool thing, because they're like, oh, the stakes are real, the consequences are real, and that changes the narrative on such a high level. And do you want to talk more about the actor interaction thing?
Oh, yeah, I mean, for instance, like pulling people in, all of us have our own methods and stuff. Being the executioner, one of the things that I developed is I play games with people. So if I see them walking around and stuff, it's not just a matter of walking up to them and being like, oh, you're new in town, aren't you? It's more of like a, hey, you want to play a game? And then it kind of catches them off guard, like, well, you're very forward, aren't you? Like, yeah, but seriously, you want to earn some gold? You want to play a game or something? And it's literally just like enticing people in, because once you get them interested in something, and get them talking, they see that, oh my gosh,
I could do this.
I can do other things like this too. And
sometimes they go a little too far, because in our catacombs we have these beautiful torches, and all of them have been broken because everyone's trying to find a secret passageway. So we're like, not yet, that's coming, but we haven't developed that yet. Please stop breaking our set.
Well, and we tried a lot in the first season, and even still continuing. So we had stones and bones, and those are bad words within the cast. And you say that, everyone just goes, ugh, because
Black rock.
The black rocks.
Black rocks.
There's
trigger.
like swear words in our. But the big one being, so we had stones and they ran out, and so we panicked and we had some extra bones lying around, so we started using those in a quest. But the problem is that we have skeletons in park, and people started tearing apart our set, started tearing the bones off of the
So
skeletons.
establishing how you interact. So New York has a lot of immersive things that are happening too, and we're picking and pulling from that. Across the board, just talking of like the fusion that's happening. We're looking at like colonial Williamsburg kind of things. We want you to come in park and actually learn learn with the blacksmith and the armorer and actually take a class and like craft these items, cooking in that particular period, all these kinds of things, from Civil War reenactments, where every aspect of this interactive medium, all of us either come from different aspects of it. For me, the past like 10, almost 15 years has been nothing but that. And so when I found out about Evermore, I was like, oh, that's something new that I could push everything that I've learned for the past little decade and a half into one place to play with. And I'm blessed to be able to do it. Do we want to get any more people from online too?
We've got
Okay.
about 2 minutes.
All right, sorry guys, online.
So I'm gonna,
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So I've looked at Evermore online, been to the website, I'm just really impressed. I mean, it's just very new and unique and so forth. But to me, it's also really scary and complex. And what I mean by that is people like putting things in buckets. And as much as it's initially interesting, I also think that it's really scary and complex, and it's not a bucket.
No, it's
right?
not.
It's not sort of Disneyland or Knott's Berry Farm or Lagoon, and when people see that, it makes sense to them. And so my question is the reality that you are for everyone, or is the reality that you're looking for a global audience that is very much into that? Because I question whether it is for everyone, because I don't think it is. But that's just my opinion.
I would say it's not for everyone, but maybe at least 90% of everyone in a lot of ways. Because again, there's just some people who are resistant to that. There's people who are resistant to Disneyland. I'm one of them. That experience is not an experience I want, to be tricked to stand in a 45-minute line that just keeps me going around in circles to ride a ride that takes 5-10 minutes, and maybe, so to me and the cost of all of that is insane. Yes, I think overall, go ahead, do you want to do it?
You talked about this global, like it launched the internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about people who like sort of Dungeons and Dragons, like everyone,
Yeah.
it's like it's intense for them, right? But you've got like millions of people in Utah, but they probably won't go because it's maybe too complex. It's not a bucket, I'm just saying it's not a bucket, right?
So you're talking about like this bucket thing, compartmentalizing lots of things.
Yeah.
I totally get that. What I think we are trying to accomplish is taking all of those buckets and putting them in a bigger bucket.
I would
So
agree.
inside of the big bucket, you have all the little compartments.
Yeah.
So if someone comes up and they don't know what to do, and it's being very complex to them, we as actors have like specific questions. Was like, do you want to earn gold? Do you want to help the town? Or do you want to have like a little bit more exciting adventure, like prove your strength and stuff? And once you find out like that bucket that they want, we've got something in park that we can direct them to.
Right
So
to that
it's-
bucket, yeah.
If it's like, we're only here because we like physical activities, and it's like, oh, cool, well, you're gonna wanna go to the archery range and the axe throwing range first.
Mhm.
Or we're here because we really want to learn, I don't know, about fairies, you send them over to the fairies.
More history.
So we've
And once we
taken all
get
these
you
specific
in a
compartments,
bucket, yeah.
and we've put them inside of a big bucket.
It does make our audience feel more comfortable to then see what's in the other bucket.
Yeah.
Once you experience your own bucket in
Because,
the context.
Just eating is a bucket. There's people who just go to theme parks to eat theme park food and do YouTube reviews on it. And so even that is an experience in itself. And if we get you in that, and then when you're at concessions, our people in concessions are also kind of playing characters and playing up to it as well, already easing you into it.
The reason that we're trying to be global is that we've seen there have been people adventurous enough who are not Dungeons and Dragons to come, and they loved it. That's the thing that we've gotten certain elements of different genres, especially back when we weren't advertising hardly anything, and people were just like, this is a cool new thing. We've seen enough people from different walks of life love what we're doing, that's why we're not tailoring just to Dungeons and Dragons, because we like every walk of life to come, and we've seen every walk of life come and actually have a really good time.
And as broad as it is, and kind of marketing wise, you should not do this, we're still pushing for the fact that just like Legos, it's for ages 1 to 99. And we've had 80-year-olds have an amazing time in park and dress up in cosplay and all that stuff.
Let's thank our friends from Evermore for coming.